birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
No, yes, actually, yes. Move over more. I'm sorry. But can you actually introduce yourselves now and what year you were born in?
Okay. My name is Mary Lynch, and I was born in New York in 1955.
And I'm Ray Brown, and I was born in Detroit in 1950.
We were married in 1986.
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you. These days are ours. These days are ours.
No life is as perfect as it was portrayed on TV. Many of the shows, the father never worked. You had no idea that he had a job. He just would appear, and it was not like he left for work and had a hard day and came back. And mothers were stay-at-home moms.
And they looked
perfect.
really pretty all day
And
long.
and
They weren't vacuuming. And
Right. One of the things that was a disappointment to me about my own mother, who was wonderful, but she would wear slacks, pants, and I always wanted her to wear a dress because all the women wore, they were perfectly dressed all the time.
Yeah. I think just the fact that television was so new, that idea of kind of like glossing over certain elements of what Americans were doing or feeling is certainly old, but while TV was new. I mean, the 20s, the roaring 20s of like all the arts and culture and stuff was great, but that was also the time where the Ku Klux Klan was thriving, so all that stuff kind of got glossed over, but they didn't have TV at the time to portray that.
Right.
So
CBS Television presents a special report on Sputnik 1, the Soviet space satellite. Douglas Edwards reporting.
I remember Sputnik very well. The space race was a very big deal, and they obviously beat us into space.
they were much farther ahead of us in space, and that really upset, like, my father.
As a kid, I didn't get too deeply into it because it was so far outside my world. As time went on and the Cold War became more of a reality, one of the things I remember really well is envying rich people in my community who had enough money to have a bomb shelter.
I grew up with drills, like atomic bomb drills.
We would do these drills where you would go into the hallway and put your head down as if that would protect you from a nuclear bomb.
exactly.
But it just made you very aware and very afraid.
And you, duck and cover.
Be sure and remember what Bert the Turtle just did, friends, because every one of us must remember to do the same thing. That's what this film is all about. Duck and cover.
This picture has just been transmitted by wire. It is a picture taken just a moment or two before the incident. From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
I was in school in the second grade when he was assassinated, and this was a big deal because I'm Irish and Catholic, and he was the first Catholic president, and he was of Irish descent. And I went to a Catholic grammar school. Like, the whole school assembled for the rosary, and it was a really big deal when he was assassinated.
I was in the swimming pool at school. I remember the PA system coming on and saying that he had been shot. I don't think they said he had been killed. And it was part of the fear of the Cold War. The whole thing was so hard to believe. It was so hard to believe. So many things that were changing in fundamental ways. The war in Vietnam was a big deal for me. That was a tragedy in so many ways. Someone like me who'd had a very kind of middle-class, regular upbringing, it suddenly, you saw that the government could make a terrible mistake. It created a whole sense of despair and mistrust. Then you had also birth control, civil rights, the women's movement were all happening together, and it was really an explosive time. You know, it was
And
just
the music reflected that. It was all a pushback to the World War II generation. And so the young people were just erupting back at home, and they were creating music that pushed back on you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Woodstock and drugs and, you know, just not doing anything that their parents were doing.
It was not really a happy time. It sort of looks like, I mean, there was a lot of recreational fun, but there was so much despair. If you watch a movie from the 70s, they're just terrible. They're so downbeat. Everybody gets killed in the end. People, you know, hate each other, and they never resolve anything. It's just a dead zone. I wish I had gone to college at a different time when it was more sort of normal. It was impossible to not be part of it because it was so important.
I'm sitting here thinking, I hate to go to Vietnam. While you're hot now, Bob. Bob, get it while you're hot.
Yes. Don't stop there.
I have today ordered to increase our active fighting forces by raising the monthly draft call from 17,000 to 35,000.
I don't want to go to Vietnam.
You know, I was part of the draft. I was fortunate to have a high number, so I was not going to be drafted to go to Vietnam, but friends were. That night in Cambridge, I think if you got number one, you could drink free at any bar. You know, it was that kind of you know, it was people felt very sorry for you. For the people who were protesting against that, which was me, you know, that seems, you know, so, you know, you're a traitor.
My dad was more with the government. What did your parents think?
You know, we just never really got into any fights about it. I think they were like most people, where your default position is the government knows what it's doing, and there must be some compelling reason they're sending young men to a place you couldn't even find on the map.
Well, also the whole thing about the Soviet Union and communism, that was what Vietnam was fought about, was to keep the communists out of Southeast Asia.
The domino theory, you know, that if you let this one go, it would get the next one, and then suddenly...
Which is what happened with Hitler in Europe. And they were like, they had learned their lesson. They weren't going to let that happen again. But
this was almost like an overcorrection.
It's
to that.
kind of.
So to conclude, I I would like each of you to share kind of the 3 biggest changes in America that you've witnessed over your lifetime. You can do it however, like alternating or all at once.
It's not supposed to be technology.
Aside from technology.
Oh, did you say? Oh, okay. So because technology is by far the biggest. It's just impossible for me to not the ability to record what happened. I mean, so much of what we grew up with and did is lost because we don't have any pictures. You know, I did my internship in Chicago, and one of my internship friends is one of my best friends now. I don't have a single picture of the 2 of us from that whole year of internship. I have probably 20 pictures from 4 years in college. Now you'd have like 1 million pictures.
Of like your first day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
For me, women in the workplace is a big change. So, you know, both our mothers stayed at home, and in those days, there weren't that many women, for instance, going into medicine. Now, I was one of a very few number of women in my medical school class, and nowadays, you look at medical schools, and the majority are women. The other thing that I think is different is we grew up going to church both of us, we went to different churches, but, and that was the cultural norm then. You know, I lived in a neighborhood where everybody walked down the street to the same church all together, and nowadays I don't think that the young people see it the same way. They have their own sense of spirituality, but I think the whole organized religion thing has really changed drastically.
You know, I'm not sure why I'm having such a hard time with this question. One of the things that I would say is that I was on the college newspaper, and I wrote for Associated Press. So I had, you know, some experience with news. We were just getting, you know, 3 networks' opinion of something, and that was the whole news thing of the day. Now you watch people talk about things 24/7. If you have some story that you're carrying over from Thursday to Monday, then you have to stand in front of the White House and you have to say, okay, pressure is building on, you know, like something. Pressure isn't building at all. Nothing has changed from Thursday. You know, it's just happens to be Saturday, so you have to say something. The people listening to you are thinking, oh my God, you know, everybody's getting madder and madder about some issue, when in fact nothing is happening. You know, the 24/7 kind of news cycle has not been, you know, for a while it looked, wow, this is really helpful, and now it's gone to the point where it's just ridiculous.
Or you don't know what to like think anymore.
That's
what
right.
To believe.
That's right.
There's too much.
You know, fake news has become like something that everybody talks about, but they're just trying to do a job. They're trying to keep you.
It's
and
an
the
industry.
goal,
it's another industry.
It's another industry, and the goal of the industry is not, you know,
to
following.
inform you the most effectively, but
It's
the
just
most...
to get you to watch.
Yeah, not turn the channel.
All of that, and that's a technology thing ultimately too.
But the byproduct is what I'm really looking for. Just the way people perceive events, or how it has influenced our perceptions of things. That's a very valid.
Was the unmasking of Russia. So we grew up in this very fearful time where Russia. At some point when the Berlin Wall came down, we realized, you were the one who said, you know, it was really just a shell game.
Oh, no, I'm saying...
It all collapsed at some point, and then you realized, oh, it wasn't quite as...
But I'm also saying it's a waste on Russia's side.
Yeah.
I'm saying that both sides, okay, let's say you have missiles in Cuba. Okay, just follow that through. Okay, God bless you. You know, like, okay, so that means you can kill a bunch of people in the U.S. You know, that may make you feel good, or, you know, I don't know how that really helps you.
I think the point was to never follow through, but to, like you said, just build it up. I think that's what we're taught in the Cold War. Just a bunch of build up to like...
That's right.
But that's what I'm saying, waste. That's waste both psychological waste,
Yeah.
it's financial waste, and at some point we could sustain it because our GDP is 40,000 per person, theirs is 10,000 per person. They couldn't sustain it.
Yeah.
And they still can't sustain it. And why we put up with any foolishness from Russia is a mystery to me, because they have nothing that the world wants except oil. Why we don't just say, Putin, it's over. It's a mystery to me.
Putin is over. I think that's a great way to end it. But thank you so much. That was a lot of great insight. Definitely an interesting time to grow up.